Hi, we're really happy to have you here today. As educators, we understand the importance of connecting the art of teaching with the science of data. And through map reports, we're able to do that. What we'd like to do today is walk you through a school year, thinking about the different scenarios and the kind of data that will be helpful to you in each of those situations.
As Holly said, the art of teaching is enhanced by data. I'm a middle school math teacher, and I rely on the data in map reports throughout the school year. I'm going to tell you how I use them in these four areas: understanding my students' needs, conducting parent conferences, preparing for the state test, and continually tracking my students' growth. If at any time you'd like to review a section, click here on the control bar. But before I share about the reports I use, here's an important reminder. Map reports are based on the RIT measurement scale. I like to think of it as a way to measure growth. Take my students, for example. Generally, they have RIT scores ranging from 180 to 240. What's important is how they advance along this scale over the school year, and I use the map reports to understand and measure that growth. A good place to start understanding my students' needs is with the class breakdown by goal report. Here's what it looks like online before I print. At a glance, I can see how my students performed for each area or goal within the overall subject of math. For example, with the number sense goal, I see this student falls in a lower RIT range and might need extra support with this goal. On the upper end of the RIT ranges, these students are performing at a higher level and so would require a higher level of instruction. Taking a closer look, I can get even more insight into my students' needs. Notice the number in parentheses. That number is the student's overall math RIT score. From that, I can see a student's relative strength. For example, this student is performing in a RIT range that is higher than his overall score, so this goal is a relative area of strength. For these other students, stop and think. Is their performance relatively strong or not? Actually, their performance is a potential concern for this goal because their overall RIT is higher than the RIT range where they are performing. Once I have an idea of my students' strengths and weaknesses, I begin to work with them on setting goals. That's when I turn to the Learning Continuum report. It's an interactive report with two views, the class view and the test view. I can access them both when I log into MAP and open the View Reports and Instructional Resources section. The class view is specific to my students, while the test view is a general look at the test subject. I like to start with the class view because it gives meaning to my students' RIT scores. When I click my class and test, and then expand an area within the test, I see specific skills and concepts matched with the RIT bands where my students are performing. These learning statements summarize what my students are ready to work on, as determined by the MAP assessment. For example, at the top is the lowest RIT band. One student falls in this band as shown by the student score for this goal area. In contrast, the overall RIT score applies to the entire test. Based on how the student scored, I can use these skills and concepts to help my students set specific learning goals. Of course, students can't tackle all skills and concepts at once, so we break them into short-term goals. In our class, every student is expected to set weekly learning goals. So I share with them 2 or 3 learning statements that fit with our overall lesson plans. We do this goal setting either one-on-one or within the groups identified on the class view. And we keep returning to the learning statements as my students set new goals. I also use the Learning Continuum class view as a starting place for differentiating my instruction. I say starting place because I actually use many points of data and differentiate in many ways. But the Learning Continuum does help start the process. Here are the overall steps I take. First, I compare a lesson topic I'm about to teach with the Learning Continuum class view. Second, Using the continuum of learning statements, I adjust my lesson for students who need more support, as well as those who are ready for more challenge. And third, as an option, I make further lesson adjustments by switching to the test view within the learning continuum. Let's say I'm preparing a lesson on perimeters. In the class view, I look for the area likely to contain that topic. In this case, it's under geometric measurement and relationships. To narrow down the list, I click Display Options. By the way, in some cases I would not see these display options depending on which test I'm viewing. More information is available at the end of this training. In this case, I have the option to select my classroom grade level, which limits the statements shown to the grade level standards I'm teaching. And to make scanning easier, I often choose Group by Topic. With these display settings, the statements related to perimeters stand out. Now for the second step, adjusting my lesson. The topic of my lesson is most similar to these learning statements, but these students are performing below that level. Their learning statements indicate how they can progress toward the level I'm planning to teach. In particular, notice that this skill appears in these lower RIT bands, but stops appearing in the higher RIT bands. So that skill is a good place to adjust my lesson. And for students performing higher in the continuum, I see statements that begin in this RIT band, indicating what should come next in their learning. In fact, that leads me to the third step I typically do. Suppose the students in this higher RIT band are ready for even more. To see RIT bands beyond what appear in the class view, I switch to the test view. Back on the Learning Continuum landing page, I pick the same mathematics test under the Test View heading. In the test view, RIT bands are from left to right, showing the progression of skills and concepts. Again, I'm interested in perimeter topics, so I can use the browser search command Ctrl+F. That leads me to these learning statements in the next higher RIT band. They appear here for the first time, indicating they are at the next level of instruction for those students in need of more challenge. And that's how I use the map data to meet my students' needs. When I'm setting goals with students, I share with them applicable learning statements. And when I'm preparing lessons, I compare the statements for students performing below and above the RIT band most similar to my planned lesson topic. So let's continue to the parent conferences and see how map reports form the basis of my conversations with students and parents. I first turn to the Student Goal Setting worksheet. It's a great tool for discussing each student's goals and celebrating his or her achievements. For example, I point out to Hazel and her parents that the green areas show her relative strength. Yellow highlights show areas of concern where we can focus her efforts. The other areas show performance that is in keeping with her overall RIT score. In addition, the report shows her projected RIT for the following winter term. That information helps us to agree on her goals and actions. I'll ask Hazel what RIT score she wants to target, so she takes ownership of her personal goal. We also collaborate on a specific action plan for her to attain that goal. Parents want to know how their child measures up to other students of the same age. So, for each student, I print a student progress report that shows their performance in math and reading, compared with the school district average and the normative group average. As the school year progresses, I need to ensure that my students are well prepared in advance of the state test. That's why I use the Class Breakdown by Projected Proficiency report. It shows me a projection of each student's performance, so I know if any students need extra coaching. The last report I want to show helps me track my students' academic growth throughout the school year. After each MAP assessment, I run the Achievement Status and Growth report. For example, in the spring, I can use this report to show me which students have met or exceeded their growth projections. I also look for those who did not meet their growth projection. The growth index shows how far they missed or exceeded their projected growth. with 0 meaning they met their growth exactly. Now you know how I use map reports throughout the school year. When you log into MAP, you will find all the reports here. You can also find detailed help on each report using these links.
Thank you for spending this time with us. Walking the MAP data through the school year and looking at specific opportunities for you to use the right reports in the right way leads us to the end of the school year. And that's where the real excitement comes, when we can peel back that data for every one of our kids and share with them their personal growth.